In this video on Google Sheets, we're going to go over absolute references. I'm going to go over how to carry formulas either down or across, how to show how formulas will follow when you have columns or rows inserted or deleted, and how to use absolute, relative, and mixed cell references. Let's get started. So we're going to take a look at the Amazon cart that I've been using for a while here, and I kind of went over this a little bit before, but here I have my equation. The unit total is going to be the number of units times the price. If I want, I could of course use the control tilde toggle to take a look at all the different equations I have here. Now what I want to do is I want to essentially carry this down. There's a couple different ways we can do it. I've shown that you can click and drag, you can double click, and that will carry it down as well. But one other thing that can be handy is you just select the column that you want, and I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut fill down, which is Control D. When I do that, it's going to take whatever formula I have up here and it's going to carry it down. If I look at my Control tilde toggle, I can see that essentially it's taking all these different things here and carrying it down. This first one is B2 times C2, B3 times C3, B4 times C4, etc., etc., etc. So it carried it down and I was able to quickly fill in the rest of those equations. Now, if I tried to take this particular one, let's say I want to do totals across the top here, double clicking it won't work. I could drag it, and that will accomplish essentially what I'm looking for, or the alternative is I can use fill right. I'm going to take this, I'm going to select the rows that I want with the shift and arrow keys, and I'm going to hit fill right or Control R. And it's going to take those, and it's going to fill in the exact same formula that I want, but now it's going to carry them over. So filling down, Control D for down, and fill right, Control R for right, are your handy dandy ways to do that. Now, one really cool feature is that I have all these equations right here, B5 times C5. What happens if I insert a column above here? Let's say I want to add in another item onto my Amazon cart. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to insert one above. Now, what happened to my equations? Are they all messed up? Actually, no. You'll notice that even though I inserted something, it shifted everything else to accommodate. You'll notice down here it said the sum was before C2 to C10, and then I inserted a column above it, and it shifted everything down. So now it's C2 to C11. This one was referencing cell H8, now it's referencing cell H9. It's reflecting the fact that things shifted down one when I inserted it. So it doesn't screw up all of my equations. Really nice because you put in a lot of work getting these and you wouldn't want to have to go through and manually do that. Google Sheets will fill that in for you already. So if I insert a row, it's going to take care of that. If I was to insert a column, so right now it's saying that it's cell H9, if I insert there and toggle it again, it's now I9. It's accounted for the fact that I've added in this column here, shifting all of the data over. So you don't need to worry about doing that. Inserting or deleting won't mess with your equations. Just make sure to turn off the toggle in between. Now, there is a downside to this whole carrying stuff down and across. Sometimes things get carried down that you don't want them to do. Now, I want the same 3% tax rate to go all the way down here. But if I was to click and drag and carry that down, wait a minute, what happened? How come it didn't work? I could try one of the other ones. I could fill down, I could double click, but it's not going to work. And here's the reason why. If I click and drag and carry it down, and I looked at the equation, I want them to be referencing cell H8. That's what we're aiming for here. But unfortunately, it carried that down to H9 and H10 and H11 and so on and so forth, and I don't have anything in those particular cells. So what I've done is when I carried it down, it didn't carry down the way I want. That's where we need to start using something called an absolute cell reference. We need to lock it to cell H8 so that I could carry it down without it actually impacting anything. So let's go back here, and I'm going to clear all these off. I'm going to look right here in my actual equation where it says equals H8. What I want to do is I want to lock it to cell H8, and I don't want that to change. There is a character that will lock that, and it's the $sign. I'm going to go in front of the 8, and I'm going to put a $sign there. So it's going to look like H $8. This means when I carry it down, this 8 is locked. This will not move. So watch what happens now. I click and I drag that down, and they all say H8 because no matter how much I click and drag, that 8 is locked. This is what is called an absolute cell reference. This one is actually kind of mixed because I have an absolute row, but I have flexible columns. That's not much of an issue right now, but we'll see what that means in just a moment. So H $8 is my way to make a locked cell reference. Let's look at another use of this. When I look at my equations here, I've been calculating the tax as D2, which is my unit total, times E2, which is going to be the tax. But you'll notice that every single one, E2, E3, E4, all of these are actually referencing the exact same cell down there. There's a different way I could do this. I could do, instead of D2 times E2, I could do D2 times H, $8 to reference that absolute cell. I'm going to get the exact same functional thing right here. And watch, I can drag and carry that down. My numbers haven't changed, but now I'm referencing that absolute cell. What this means is I don't need to reference this tax rate anymore. This column is not important anymore. I've now calculated the tax, and I don't need to worry about the tax rate because anytime I set it right here, it's going to be automatically reflected. So using an absolute cell reference here allowed me to get rid of an entire column that I don't necessarily need anymore. These are all referencing that tax rate there. Now let's take a look at the mixed cell reference tab. Here we're going to use absolute references in a place that's a little bit more applicable for them. So here I have 4 different products: lightsabers, blasters, droids, and X-Wings, and here's the price for them. What I'm looking at right here is a discount. January, of course, is the big month for moving all of these things here, so the discount is only going to be 5%. But everyone knows that June is the off-season for X-Wings, so they're trying to mark those down to get them moved. So we want to have these prices here reflect these different markdowns. So the equation that we have here is B2 times 1 minus B14. So I'm looking at this particular price here times whatever the markdown is, 1 minus B14, which is going to work out to be 95%. So I'm going to take my price minus that 5% discount. I want to carry that down, and to do that I could just click and drag. But you'll notice that, wait a minute, that discount doesn't seem to be applying to any of these ones here. Let's look at the equation. What I'm looking at right here is B3 times 1 minus B15. But here's the problem. It's trying to reference this cell, and then this cell for this one, and then this cell. What I want them to do is I want them to be locked to this particular cell. That is where an absolute cell reference is going to be really handy. So let's go back and fix my equation. I want to lock it to B14. I want to make sure that this particular number isn't going to move, so I'm going to put the $sign in front of it. Now, it's always going to be referencing B14. That number 14 is locked. So let's see what happens there. It won't affect my first one, but when I carry it down, now each one of these is going to be referencing that 5% discount, so everything is going to carry just the way I want it. Now, I could go ahead and I could do that for January, February, March, April, May, and June. So I could take these equations here and carry them across. But hold up, everything went all weird. Let's take a look at the equation to figure out why. Now the problem is here is it's trying to reference C2. Well, I don't want it to be referencing C2. There's nothing in there. So what I need to do, instead of locking the number, I need to lock the column. So let's take a look here at my original equation. And it's always referencing B2. But I want to make sure that I don't want it to be locked to the 2, because I want that to be able to carry down. What I want that to do is be locked to the letter B. So I'm going to put the $sign in front of the B. Again, that won't change my first one. I can carry it down, and that is all still good. Now when I carry that across, the discounts are going to be reflected. Here it's still referencing B2, B3, B4, B5. I've locked that column so that even though I'm dragging across the columns here, it's not going to be affecting that. So here I have a mixed reference. This part here, I am locking the column. This part here, I am locking the row. There is also a way to do an absolute cell reference where I'm going to be locking both of them. So watch as I try to do an absolute cell reference where I'm doing both a locking the column and locking the row, locking the column, locking the row. Here's the downside. I'm literally doing the exact same calculation every single time. I've defeated the entire purpose of being able to drag and have the formula be dynamic. In this case here, I only want the column locked for here because I don't want it to move it for there. But here, I want the number to be locked as I drag it across, so it's not going to drag that down here. So that is a mixed cell reference. Here I'm locking the column, here I'm locking the row. Now, one little shortcut, there is a faster way to do this. If I click on the cell that I'm talking about, B2, on a PC, if you hit the F4 button, it's going to toggle. So I'm just going to keep hitting that, and it's going to be cycling through them. So instead of having to actually sit there and put the $ in front of it, you have the option of just hitting F4, and it's going to lock both of them. Now just the row, now just the column, now neither. So I can toggle between those 4 different settings to get the one that I want.